was only when we got closer that I saw this almost motionless body in the water, and it just hit me, and I thought, he's face down in the water. I think he's drowned.
At the front, mate, at the front, because we're not going to have any.
There's absolutely nothing like it. It's the closest you can get to flying as free as a bird. You've got no structure around you. It's not like an airplane where you're sitting inside. There's nothing between you and the air. It's hard to describe. It's the sense of freedom is absolutely amazing.
I remember seeing it and thinking, that looks really cool, and went along to a school and gave it a go, and yeah, fantastic. Haven't looked back since. Yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone really that isn't worried about heights and has that feeling of freedom. The day I was down there, it was on Christmas Eve, it was southwest. That was a good location to go. And I do like the cliffs, nice and smooth, beautiful views, relaxing.
The weather was really good. The winds were in the right direction for the cliffs at Newhaven. So I flew all the way down as far as Saltine, and then back along the cliffs again, back to the takeoff, landed, warmed my hands up, had a drink of water. I thought I'll squeeze in another like 40 minutes before I have to go to work.
I remember taking off and the conditions being really smooth and, generally chilled out, looking forward to Christmas and just enjoying the moment.
Made the serious mistake of not taking into account the state of the tide. Really, as soon as I took off, you fly down on the kind of south-facing cliffs, and then they curve around to the southwest. You go around the corner. They call it the point. You go around the point. Even before I got to the point, I looked back and I saw that it was out of range of the beach. At that stage, even before I flew around the corner, I knew I was in trouble.
It started off pretty good, but I was failing to pay attention to what was going on around me, really, the changing conditions. And the ridge lift stopped. So obviously we fly on a cushion of air along the cliffs, which we saw on. The wind dropped right off and I descended below the cliff line.
And as soon as you go below the top of the cliffs, you're going down. I've landed at the bottom loads of times and walked out. And, if the tide's out, it's not usually an issue. Loads of little beaches and the little coves, and you can usually do a spot landing on one of the little beaches. I knew I was going to end up in the water. I knew the tide was going to come in before we could get out.
There was a small beach where I could see another glider already landed, which was Dermot, headed in and landed next to him. It dawned on me what's actually been going on. I've been in my own little bubble up there enjoying the day and having a great time. And then obviously, now I realised, I'm stuck on a small beach.
So I packed up as quickly as I can. I called my friend Paul on takeoff and asked him to alert the Coast Guard. Trevor landed maybe about a minute after me, and I said to him, pack up as quickly as you can and follow me. I was literally running along the beach and looking back over my shoulder to see how far Trevor was behind me, because we just had to get as west as quickly as we could.
So I put my glider away as quickly as possible to try and make a fast escape on foot if I could along the cliff line, quickly becoming apparent that we're going to need rescuing. We had no phone signals. We did try and look at our phone, and we were trying to put all our hopes really on another pilot would have called RNL for us and seen us go down.
As the tide was coming in, it was eventually it was around our ankles, and then eventually it was around our knees. And there was a little chalk cliff on the west side of the cove, which was a little bit higher, so we climbed up on that.
Then the seriousness of our situation, I guess, really hit home to us both, because obviously we didn't know if we were going to get rescued. We had no phone signal. Tide was coming in quick. It's obviously getting cold. Water was starting to lap at us, and we held on to pieces of flint which were jutting out from the cliff face to brace ourselves against the waves, which were eventually crashing over the top of us onto the cliff face. Obviously, as each wave rolled in, I pulled myself as flat as I could to the cliff to obviously avoid being dragged out before the next wave hit again.
So we were discussing what the best thing to do. How are we going to maximise our chances of survival from this?
Then you're sort of thinking, yeah, this is getting very real now with the waves coming in.
I just finished cleaning the station, getting it all ready to sort of leave it for a period of time. I was just going to go home and start the Christmas present wrapping, and just as sort of getting the dogs ready to leave, the pager went off.
So we were having a big family Christmas at our house. Been working on our bathroom at home, so I was trying to get that to a state where it could be used by family, and we were kind of nearing that point, and then the pager went off.
So I went and got the boat started, looked at the crew that we had, responded on our cams, met with the launch authority at the station, and they gave us the brief of We've got 2 paragliders that are cut off by the tide, somewhere between Newhaven and Peacehaven.
When I arrived, I was greeted by the Deputy Launch Authority. I was told that I didn't need to put any of my all-weather kit on, because in essence I was going to go into a dry suit. So all I needed was my wellies and a life jacket to get down to the lifeboat.
As we were sort of making our way out of the harbour, we knew that if there were people cut off by the tide, then we knew that we were going to need to deploy the 7-class lifeboat's daughter craft, the Y boat. So we got our crew selected for the Y boat, got the Y boat prepped for use, as other crew were sort of getting ready with binoculars and the equipment to carry out a search. We started our search from the breakwater at Newhaven, heading in a westerly direction, and the sea state wasn't too bad. It was smooth to slight with probably sort of half a metre of swell. Ideal to launch the Y boat in those conditions. As we transited the initial search area from sort of Newhaven to Peacehaven, one of our crew members spotted 2 people that they believed to be the paragliders that were cut off by the tide, and they were the water at that point was just sort of lapping around their knees, so they were getting wet at that point, and we still had another hour of flood tide to come.
Luckily, one of them was dressed in relatively bright clothing, so we did see them fairly easily.
So when we saw the lifeboat, it was a huge relief to know, obviously, we're no longer on our own. That was a big deal to us.
When the lifeboat came, it was, oh, great, because of the waves were crashing off the cliffs and then bouncing back. And the water's quite shallow there. The lifeboat had to stay about 500 metres offshore.
The coxswain made the decision to deploy the Y boat with myself and Chris in it. As we sort of got closer to the casualties, the swell and the sea had picked up quite a bit, and obviously we had the claptopic wave formation where the tide was pushing in to the cliffs, bouncing back off, and then coming back out at us. So made it quite challenging for the Y boat in those conditions.
Things started to get a little bit more dramatic at that point, and we realised actually time was of the essence. This wasn't just a couple of lads that were cut off by the tide. We could go in relatively slow time with the Y boat, pick them up and bring them back out in relative safety. We needed to get in there and then.
Knowing that the seabed round there is very dangerous, you've got sharp, jagged rocks that could easily puncture and damage the Y boat or affect the engine. Knowing that we had the incoming tide, the claptopic wave coming off of the cliff face, it made it quite tricky for us. So we didn't just go in all guns blazing. So we took a few seconds to sort of gather our thoughts and have a discussion about what is going to be the best way to execute this rescue.
The cliff was just soaking wet with spray and water, so they were just struggling to hold on. We knew at that point that the rescue was going to be tricky, and we decided at that point that actually it would probably be better, or Lewis decided it would be better if we went back to the all-weather boat, picked up some throw lines to see if we could get a throw line to these lads.
They tried throwing a rope with a buoy on the end, but they couldn't get it close enough.
We could see them trying to communicate, but we couldn't hear anything they were saying through the noise of the waves, which were sort of crashing over us on the cliff.
Eventually, Trevor said, "Right, I'm going for it," and he launched himself.
I could see our situation wasn't going to change anytime soon, because the guys in the boat were just bobbing up and down, and you could see him yelling, couldn't hear a thing. So I decided I'd swim.
Fortunately enough, he managed to keep hold of his kit bag and use that as a sort of a flotation device to swim towards us.
It was the hardest swim I think I've ever had to do. Felt like I was making very little headway, but extremely grateful to have had my paraglider bag and being able to use it as a float. I think it gave me a little bit of a break and able to breathe whilst I was trying to get to the guys. Soon enough they were pulling me onto the rib, taking me at speed back to the lifeboat.
Right, we're not going to have a long alongside, okay? No, we haven't got time. Right, where's the other guy gone?
I remembering looking at the cliff and thinking, well, he was there just a minute ago. We knew where we were heading because it was pretty much in front of the ALB. We headed to exactly the same point, and I said to Lewis on the way, I can't see him. I don't know where he is.
And we were like, oh gosh, where's he gone? We can't see him anymore. So didn't know if we'd just lost sight of him from we were looking at a different part of the cliff, but in fact he'd actually been knocked off the rocky ledge that he was stood on.
I got washed from the side of the cove right into the middle. And every time I tried to get away from I was trying to swim away from the cliff because I knew I had to get out of that surf. But every time I tried it, I would just get waves in my face. I was swallowing water. I was breathing water in. I realised I've got to turn on my back and keep my face up to the sky so I can breathe.
It was only when we got closer that I saw this almost motionless body in the water, and it just hit me, and I thought, he's face down in the water. I think he's drowned. And it's just this, I mean, I've got a shiver going down my spine thinking about it now. As we got closer to him, I realised that he wasn't face down, he was actually floating on his back.
Given the fact that the surf had picked up quite a bit by now, then we were sort of on the border limits of what the Y boat could do. We knew that we had to get in there quick, and we had sort of probably just one chance at getting in there without causing the boat any damage.
And I just remember grabbing his hand, grabbing some of his clothing and dragging him towards the Y boat, and he was just a complete dead weight.
It's hard to describe what that felt like. That's like, I know I'm going to live. Because I was seriously fearful for my life. I reckon I had 2 to 5 minutes left. I can remember getting my arms over the side of the boat and just clinging on for dear life and saying, I'm not letting go of this, no matter what.
And he just had no energy, absolutely no energy whatsoever. I was trying to get him onto the Y boat and just wasn't able to.
Got hold of you, mate, don't worry, we're just trying to get us out of this surf. Are you alright? How you feeling? You alright? Can you talk to us?
Yeah, talk to me. Yeah. Have you got any injuries? You've held a lot of water.
When they hauled me into the rib, they said, "Oh, how you doing? Can you speak?" And I can remember saying, "Yes," but that was, I mean, I was conscious. In other words, I could see and hear what was going on, but I couldn't move, and I could hardly speak. When the little rib came alongside the big lifeboat, they tried to get me to sit up, and I couldn't. My body had just shut down, and they had to manhandle me on board.
Everybody ready?
2. Yeah. Get that round, mate. Get him in the wheelhouse.
Once on the boat, the cold sets in, and obviously as did the realisation as to how lucky I was to be alive, and how the situation could have been very different had the lifeboat crew not found us that day, for which obviously I will always be grateful.
I spent the trip back onto Newhaven basically lying on the deck of the boat. They had wrapped me up in towels. I remember there was one crew member had his hand on my shoulder, and he was talking to me the whole time, and just that human touch. I get quite emotional when I think about it. Just that reassurance, really. That was absolutely wonderful. That was wonderful.
That was it, really. Back to the lifeboat station, where the guys continue to give us attention and make sure we were warm and get us out of our wet clothes and check us over.
Like when they took me off, they had to put me on a stretcher to take me off the lifeboat because I couldn't walk. When they brought me into the lifeboat station, they took off my wet clothes, put me in a lovely thermal onesie, sat me on a chair, put a heater underneath the chair, gave me some hot tea, and the paramedics checked my temperature, and it was like below 30 degrees. So 28 degrees is when you go unconscious. So I was on the point of unconsciousness when I was in the water. I was just that close.
Well, that was tight, wasn't it?
We're very glad that we were able to get both casualties back in a live, well state, as it were, especially on Christmas Eve, so that they were both going home to their families, which was nice.
We almost did a bit of a high five, as if to say well done to each other. And I remember saying to Lewis, I think, that I was glad that it was him that was helming the Y boat.
Christmas is always a time that people want to be spending time with their family, and I think that if we hadn't have launched when we had, and we hadn't been there at that time, it could have been a very different outcome for these casualties that were already knee-deep in the water. If they didn't have a mobile phone or any way of calling for help, it could have been a very different story for them and their loved ones at Christmas, which would be a very sad time.
Knowing that we saved someone's life or two people's lives is a humbling experience, really. I'm glad that we could be there.
Early Christmas morning was when I really started to think, wow, that was, I can remember getting up and going out in the garden to have a cigarette and looking up at the sky, and it was kind of blue skies with little puffy clouds, and just a wave of euphoria washed over me, thinking, wow, it feels good to be alive.
Thank you, that's all I can say. There's nothing else I can really put in words at all. Very grateful.
I really don't have words to describe. They're heroes, and they do it for nothing. They volunteer. That's just an amazing thing that people do that. It's the reason I'm still alive.